To say I was surprised is a bit of an understatement. But after a couple of minutes of shocked silence, a few deep breathing exercises, and falling heavily into a chair, an explanation was brought forth. To put it simply, this had all been an elaborate game. One lucky participant willingly signs up to be the main character in a horror story. The side characters are all the same, and the protagonist is always missing from the list of party invitees at the start. It's an incredibly high-budget production. And an extensive number of waivers are supposed to be filled out prior to the event because, as we've seen, there are pretty much no rules. Minor injury is permitted, and you have free range over the house. You just can't kill anyone, or leave the premises. It was the ultimate choose-your-own-adventure. "You alright, man?" Ander asked, squatting down so that we were eye level. "Is your name even really Ander?" I asked in a quiet croak. A warm smile spread softly across his face. "No, but we are contractually obligated to insist that you call us by our character names. We wouldn't want to break the fiction." He laughed. I nodded hollowly. Although relief had seeped back into my bones, so did embarrassment. It was ridiculous that I had ever thought any of it was real. The sudden drop in adrenaline had made my body feel heavy, and I was officially drained. In the doorway, Forrest reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, square, and black. A walkie-talkie. He pressed the button and spoke into it. "Hey, we've hit a bit of a snag down here. You might want to meet us in the dining room." At first, I had been confused as to who he was talking about, but when she arrived, it made perfect sense. Though the last time I'd seen her, I had been frantically feeling for a pulse on her wrist. There was Fawn, looking as healthy as ever. Her shirt still had a circular spread of scarlet from her puncture wound, but there was no longer a fire poker protruding from her chest. "What's going on?" she asked the room. "Nothing in my jar," Ander answered, motioning to the red mess within his container. Though I was relieved to know that it most likely wasn't human organs that swam within the jar, I had no desire to ask what the substance truly was, because I know blood when I smell it. "Well, that sucks," she said casually. Then she turned to me and smiled, a customer service smile. "There's our special guest. You're doing really well. Better than most we've seen. How are you liking it so far?" I opened my mouth slightly, faltered, and then closed it again. Forrest gave her a slight nudge and shook his head. "Let's talk in the next room," he said quietly, and the two walked out. Ander must have seen the way that I had looked at Fawn because he suddenly spoke up. "I suppose it's worth mentioning that Graham is fine too. He got himself a deal, so he only had to work the early shift. Beheaded, replaced with a decapitated dummy, and he's home for dinner. Lucky bastard." I nodded. Of course. There'd never been a meal of lung or a crude decapitation. Just a story that I had fallen for, wholly and completely. A few moments passed. "What's taking William so long?" Wendy asked with a yawn. "If he plans on picking up where we left off, he's really cutting it close." "I was just thinking the same thing," Greta added with a nod. "I'll go check on the old man," Ander said. "Want to come with me, Sam? Look like you could use the walk." Although my knees felt weak, even when sitting in the chair, I agreed. The two of us left the room in search of William. Wandering the halls with Ander felt strange, since the tone had shifted so drastically from the last time, when Andy had dragged me into the spare room and showed me fake Wendy's jar. It had been so shocking to find out that there had been a case of mistaken identity. Little did I know that everything that had happened up to that point had been a lie. It was a rubber ball under the armpit, by the way. I furrowed my brow at the shape of Ander walking in front of me. "What? You were wondering why you didn't feel a pulse on Fawn? Rubber ball under the armpit does the trick, cuts the blood flow to the wrist. Oldest trick in the book." I nodded absent-mindedly. Of course. How could it have been anything else? We passed through the parlor where the body, which I now knew to be fake, still lay underneath the sheet. Ander, a true professional, didn't even spare it a second glance before stepping around it. I, however, hesitated. Wait. I knelt down, feeling silly as my hands trembled. Ander watched as I peeled back the sheet, It was remarkable. I'd never seen a headless body, but I was sure the difference between this dummy and a real one were few and far between. The skin had torn so perfectly, the elasticity pulling back on itself so it bloomed like petals around the raw edge. The stump and everything that lay within it, despite being a new sight, seemed disturbingly familiar, as though the body will always recognize something that lies within itself, even if the mind cannot. Gently, I pressed a finger to the open wound. It came back red and cold. Amazingly real. "Let's go. The others are waiting," Anders said patiently. I couldn't help my incredulity, but I slowly stood up and continued with him. We walked down a few more hallways, ones I hadn't been down next. Perhaps they came later in the story, until we reached a dead end. It was remarkably difficult to find, but I supposed that was the point. They wouldn't want a customer stumbling upon a direct line to the organizers of the game, lest the spell be broken. It was a shabby-looking door to a broom closet. Ander raised a hand and knocked on the wood. "William, you got a hold of him yet?" We waited, but there was no answer. "Maybe he's already on his way back," I said. "Takes kind of a long time to get from the dining room to here." I honestly just wanted this to be over. I was done. I wanted to be out of the house, away from the unwrapping party and these people that I had come to know and then unknow over the course of a few hours. Maybe once I was out of the madhouse, I'd be able to figure out how exactly I ended up there in the first place. Andrew turned the antique doorknob, but it didn't budge. "What the hell?" he said, trying to force it harder. When it still didn't give, he pressed his shoulder up against the wood and gave it a shove. "William?" he called out again, before once again banging against the door. "Here, let me help," I said, noticing that his slight build wasn't doing very much. We lined up, facing each other. 1, 2... As we both reared back, 3! The door burst open. I saw what I feared. The image of a man, slumped down on the floor in front of an old-fashioned telephone mounted on the wall. The receiver hung low by the cord, the resonant buzzing of the dial tone, the only sound to be heard. Only the man wasn't the one I had expected. It wasn't William who lay on the floor of the closet, no. The face was unmistakable. It was Graham Willoughby. The real Graham Willoughby, I figured, since we had seen the headless doppelganger laying in the parlor moments before. His eyes were slightly open and glazed over, suggesting unconsciousness, and his chin had fallen heavily upon his chest in a bent position. Part of me was hesitant to act. Was this just a leftover stunt from before the party had gone wrong, or was this a last-ditch effort for the actors to deliver on their promise of the company? One final scare for the night? But then Ander took a step back. I turned to look at him, and there I saw something that chilled me to the bone. For the first time, I saw what fear truly looked like on that man's face. "Ander?" I said shakily, trying to keep the sound of desperation out of my tone. "Ander, is this part of it? I mean, I don't care about the game or the story, just tell me." He wasn't speaking. His mouth quivered as he stepped back again. I followed his eyes to where they were traveling, down from Graham's face and along his body. And then I noticed it. He was dressed oddly. He hadn't just changed clothes from his costume. There's something that felt strange, almost discordant in the way that he looked. More than just the clothes. The proportions of his very being just seemed off, like a funhouse version of the man I had briefly known. He was wearing khakis and a sweater, which was an odd choice, seeing as it was a muggy July night. And that was when it hit me. He looked disturbing because his bottom didn't match his top. The detached body of Forrest Jacoby still clothed in the outfit that matched his sister's, lay still and dead upon the floorboards, proudly wearing Graham Willoughby's head like a crown. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to wish you a very well, we're getting close to October. Are you as excited as I am? Also, thank you for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast if you're listening on Spotify. The summer is finally coming to an end, and that means we're moving into the fall. And as we get further into the fall, for those of you that live in cooler climates, you'll probably like to have a nice cup of tea. To get a nice cup of tea, my wife sells it. It's at etsy.com/shop/ivorymonocletea. You can get a whole bunch of different teas there, including creepypasta-based teas. My personal favorite is the Dark and Stormy Night, which is why you can get a sticker of me on it. If you do buy that one, you can always ask for that sticker of me doing the little dab, and you get a special dab sticker. Also, I want to give a very big thank you to all of my Patreons over there on Patreon, because you guys have helped me out quite a bit. I'm not even quite a bit. You guys are honestly, you guys pulled me out of an incredibly dark place when I first had to look at moving and all of the demon stuff that YouTube does, and thank you guys very dearly for all the help that you've given me. People like Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Brian Arce, Bobby Karman, Stephanie Butler, Tristan Pelton, Chase Burnett, Diana Kraus, Raven Mitz, Satanic Aries, Ness69420, AshWood, Payne, Nessie, Blitzscreed, BardoHawk764, Melancholy Corpse, Ferb, Harley, Billy Morrow, Madam Skullbunny, Sashi Sazaku, @Grizzly Olsen Pro, Kayden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, MyBodySoundsLikeRiceKrispys, AshWood, Lord of the Weebs, Jay, Faye Lockett, Miss Xander, Mr. Unsettling Spaghetti, Suji Campbell, Azarine Fox, Robert White, Fried Chicken 12, James Bruce, Freddy Krueger, Ty Nanny, Michael Scarborough, Infernal One, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Nels, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Liam Newman, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Nina Smith, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trace Miles, and Corey Kenshin. Once again, thank you all so much to everyone who is in this list of names that I mispronounce, and everyone who's in the description, and everyone who supports me at patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. I can't thank you guys enough for listening, for watching, and I wish you all sweet dreams. Good night, everyone.